So I've been thinking a lot about technique lately. You may have seen my spatchcock chicken recipe. And I've never deboned a chicken before, but I've always kind of wanted to. It just seems like a really extra way of prepping a chicken. It's totally unnecessary, but can make for some really interesting results. So today I'm combining that deboned chicken idea with the classic Italian porchetta recipe, and I think this could turn out to be really delicious. So here I've got a chicken, and to debone it, the first thing you want to do is remove the wishbone. So I've got a boning knife here that should theoretically make things easier, because that is the knife for the job, but we'll see. I'm just going to blindly stab into where I think the wishbone is. It doesn't really matter if you mangle it a little bit. This part of the chicken is not going to be really visible. Once we've got that out, I'm going to slice down the back. And I want to find the shoulder joint. So move the wing around until you can find it. Get your knife in there. Disconnect it from the rest of the body. This will make it a lot easier to access all of the meat underneath. So next I'll fillet the back meat off of the carcass. And I'll do the same on the other side. Now there's a French method where you basically just run your fingers down the length of the carcass and strip the meat off, but it tends to leave a lot of meat stuck to the carcass, which is great for soup, but I kind of want as much meat as possible to be attached to the deboned chicken, so that's why I'm using a knife. But you will definitely see better results in certain spots if you do jam your fingers in there and just detach the muscle from the bone. Once the top half is done, we'll move on to the thighs. So same idea, move the legs around until you can find those hip bones, get your knife in there and detach them. And now we can fully remove the rest of the back meat. And now we want to debone the thighs. So just get in there with your knife and start scraping along the edge of the femur. And this is one of those areas where using your fingers may actually help a little bit better. Once that's done, we can kind of rotate the chicken around and remove the breasts as well. Just keep going until you hit that breastbone. At which point you can remove the entire rib cage and spine. Next I want to remove the drumette, so just get in there with your knife and start detaching those muscles from the bone. It will definitely help to get your fingers in there because the tendons are attached pretty firmly, and it's a little fiddly to use your knife to do that. But just keep stripping that meat away and eventually remove the bone. And you don't have to remove the bones from the flat, but for whatever reason I opted to make my life a little bit more difficult. So same deal, you can split this along one side and just strip those bones out. Once that's done, go ahead and do the exact same thing for the femur and whatever you call the lower section of a chicken. I don't know if they have a tibia and fibula, not really that clear on avian anatomy, but yeah, remove those bones. And here you are left with a fully intact deboned chicken. It's a little bit weird to see. And you could deep fry this, which would be amazing, but let's actually prep it to fill with our spice blend. So I'm gonna cut open the lower legs so they lay flat. And then I'll fillet the breasts so that they are a little bit thinner. And feel free, since we're gonna roll this up, to move some of that meat around to maybe some of the thinner patches. I had a few spots down towards where the tail was that didn't have any meat and it was just skin. So I took some breast meat, threw it in there. And now we're ready to make our spice blend. So into a mortar and pestle, I'm gonna add a few cloves of garlic and mash those up into a paste. Then we'll go in with some herbs. I've got a tablespoon or about 8 leaves of sage. I'm gonna mince up into basically a powder. I've got another tablespoon or about 2 sprigs of fresh rosemary that I'll also mince up. The zest of a lemon. And you'll see a lot of recipes call for fennel fronds or fennel seed, but supposedly the real traditional ingredient to use here is fennel pollen, which has a similar flavor to fennel seeds, but it's much stronger. And it's also much more expensive. This 1 ounce tin cost me about 20 bucks. So go for the seeds, I'd say, if you're not really as crazy or serious as I am about this kind of stuff. I'll add in some salt and get to mashing until a paste forms. Then I'm gonna add in some olive oil. And some black pepper. And keep mashing until it's relatively smooth. Now let's spread that paste evenly on the entire bird. And roll it up nice and tight. Then we can go ahead and truss it. So tie a knot on one end with some butcher's twine. And you'll have to watch closely on how I loop the string to make an endless truss without cutting and tying new knots. It's pretty simple. You just got to get used to which way your hand is rotating with the string. So I'm going to space those loops out about every 1 inch just to keep everything nice and tight. And as you're going, you may have to go back and tighten some of the previous loops. Once you get to the end, we'll do 1 more loop around lengthwise. Tie it off. And we're gonna dry brine this overnight so the skin gets nice and crispy. So I'm just gonna salt it nicely on every side. Place it on a tray. And pop it in the fridge uncovered overnight. When it comes out, you can see that skin has dried on up and it's ready to roast. So I'm going to transfer it on top of a wire rack, on top of a tray to catch any dripping. And I'll throw that into a 160 centigrade or 325 Fahrenheit oven for about an hour or 2, or until the internal temperature reads about 165 Fahrenheit or 73 Celsius. Now after that time, my skin wasn't as crispy as I wanted, so I just sprayed it down with some oil and popped it back in at 200C, 400F, till it got nice and golden. And make sure to let this rest so the juices stay trapped inside as much as possible. As hard as that is to do, because this looks amazing. And the best way to serve this is on some fresh focaccia, which I did not have and I did not feel inclined to make. But I do have this ciabatta, which we can sort of do a focaccia treatment on. So I'll just slice it into big sandwich-sized pieces. Drizzle it with oil. Sprinkle it with some salt. And toast it until golden. And now I can slice up my chicken porchetta. Chiquetta? Not sure what to call this. Which you can see is super juicy on the inside. You've got that ring of herbs and you've got that crispy, crispy skin. I'll throw that onto a sandwich so all the juices can get soaked up into the bread. And this is honestly amazing. I know it takes a lot of effort to debone a chicken. Maybe there's a better way of accomplishing that than what I've outlined here. But really the balance of herbs and chicken juices, all soaking up into that ciabatta bread. This is an amazing sandwich. And you've got to get your hands on one if this is just one of those things you make once and then have fever dreams for the rest of your life about it.